Shadow Slave. By Guiltythree. Chapter 1283, Ketch. A small wooden vessel was resting on the sparkling water. The 7 suns were rising from the distant depths, and the world was painted in the lilac hues of early dawn. Illuminated by that beautiful light, the vessel seemed like an illusion. What is this? His hoarse voice was full of disbelief. It was just too improbable to find an empty boat swaying gently on the waves just when his essence had run out, and despair had taken hold of his heart. The great river was inconceivably vast, and yet, they had just happened to find themselves a mere 100 meters away from a boat at that exact moment. Even when fated was involved, the coincidence seemed too convenient. It was to such a degree that Sonny even considered that he was hallucinating. Wouldn't be the first time, anyway. Maybe the Sin of Solace had learned a new trick. However, Nephi saw the boat, too. She hesitated for a moment, then said numbly, "It's a ketch." Sonny was about to ask what the word ketch meant, but he was too tired for unnecessary questions. It was probably a type of boat, regardless. Nephi's knew about these things, considering that she had even built one for them, back on the forgotten shore. It was probably also a part of her legacy training. The two of them remained still for a few seconds, then swam toward the ketch. Well, Nephi's was the only one swimming while supporting Sonny. He just weakly moved his legs to help her a little. Soon, they reached it. Sonny placed his palm on the hull of the sailboat, still unsure if it was real. However, the dark wood felt smooth and solid to his touch. He traced his hand across it, both stunned and relieved. It might be a trap. Even if it was, they had no choice but to climb into the ketch. It was too small to protect them from great abominations like the Azure Serpent, but anything was better than nothing. More than that. The ketch couldn't be as simple as it looked. It was drifting in the harrowing waters of the great river without a scratch on its hull, after all. A mundane boat would have been destroyed in a matter of hours here. Even the piece of flotsam that Sonny had once used as a raft, which was tough enough to withstand the nails of a master, was turned into tiny splinters. It had to have been a part of a large vessel before turning into flotsam, too, and that mysterious vessel had ended up being destroyed. Plus, the ketch was not really drifting. It was staying in place, unaffected by the current of time. So, it was certainly special in some way. A tentative spark of hope ignited in Sonny's heart. Despite the modest size of the wooden sailboat, its sides were too tall for them to simply climb over them, especially in their weakened state. However, a rope ladder was conveniently lowered into the water near the bow of the ketch, as if inviting them in. Sonny and Nephi's glanced at each other. His paranoia was acting up, not without a reason, and from the looks of it, she felt the same way. But there was no decision to make. Since salvation miraculously presented itself, they would be fools not to accept the unexpected gift. Nephi's pushed Sonny toward the ladder, and then helped him climb up. Falling over the side of the ketch, Sonny sprawled on the wooden floor. The feeling of something solid under him was both unfamiliar and heavenly. The gentle swaying of the boat was like a lullaby. Ah. A moment later, Nephi's awkwardly climbed over the rim and tumbled down, landing squarely on top of him. Sonny let out a weak groan. Ow. They remained motionless for a few moments, catching their breaths, then slowly extricated themselves from each other and took a cautious look around. The ketch was not too big, about 7 meters long. Its layout was very simple. There was only a single deck, with no roofed interior or cabins. The deck was completely open, with 2 masts, a longer one and a shorter one, rising into the air like slender, dark pillars. Everything was made with a mundane, but exquisite level of craftsmanship. The wooden surfaces were tastefully engraved, showing all sorts of flowing images, now smoothed out by the wind, water, and passage of time. The ketch seemed like the loving creation of a supremely skilled artisan, even if it had seen better days. One look was enough to tell that the wooden boat was very old. However, it had been maintained with the utmost care, remaining in near-perfect condition. Sonny was musing about who could have taken care of the ketch when his gaze finally reached the stern, where the steering oar was supposed to be. Unlike the chain breaker, there was no runic circle for the helmsman. Instead, there was only a very mundane wooden bench. And there, on that bench, a corpse was sitting with its head hung low. His body suddenly grew stiff. What? Sunny was momentarily paralyzed by shock. Because that corpse. It looked eerily familiar. It was shrouded in a dark mantle, which made it hard to determine whether the body belonged to a man or a woman. All that he could see was that the person was of small stature, and terribly thin. Their long white hair moved slightly in the wind, and their face. The face was obscured by a mask of black lacquered wood. The mask was carved to resemble the face of a ferocious demon. Its teeth were bared, with 4 fangs protruding from its mouth, and there were 3 twisted horns rising from it like a crown. Inside the black chasms of its eyes, there was nothing but pure darkness. It was Weaver's mask. And the corpse was just like the one he had found beneath the ruined cathedral of the Dark City, all those years ago. Chapter 1284, Hail Weaver. Sunny found himself unable to move for a few moments. Encountering the Ketch just when they desperately needed shelter was already shocking enough. Finding a corpse that looked eerily similar to the nameless prisoner of the hidden dungeon beneath the ruined cathedral inside the Ketch. It sent him into a fugue state. All kinds of wild thoughts rushed through his mind. For a split second, Sunny even imagined that it was his own corpse, brought here from the future by some strange anomaly of the mystical river. But, no. The proportions were all wrong. He was not a tall man, but the mysterious person was even smaller. They were practically tiny. In fact, now that Sunny had taken a good look at the corpse, he realized that it was different from the prisoner of the ruined cathedral, as well. The dark mantle and the mask were the same, but the body hidden beneath them was not. Even with its features obfuscated, he could tell the difference. Still. What was the meaning of this? How could there be another Weaver's mask? Who were these 2 people, and how could they be so similar despite the great divide between the Dark City and the tomb of Ariel? Nephi seemed startled, as well, albeit for a different reason than Sunny. She did notice his strong reaction, though. Sunny. What is it? She must have noticed that the mask the corpse was wearing was the same mask Mongrel wore. She also knew that it was a divine memory of the 7th tier, even if Sunny had never told her where Weaver's mask came from. He took a deep breath. That corpse. It's just like the one I found in the Dark City, beneath the cathedral. That was where I got the mask. Sunny had found the spawn of the vile thieving bird by pure coincidence, even if that coincidence might not have happened without the influence of fated. Everything that followed after absorbing the drop of ichor that contained blood weave, however, was the result of logic and reason. It was the consequence of that first chance encounter. Guided by the ability to see the radiance of divinity, which bloodweave granted him, he explored the cathedral of the Dark City and received Weaver's mask. Guided by Weaver's mask, he dove into the sky below, reached the ebony tower, and discovered Weaver's severed arm, thus acquiring bone weave. What was the cause of this situation, then? Was it a coincidence or the result of his choices? As Sunny was spacing out, consumed by these thoughts, Nephi's looked at him with a frown. Corpse. What do you mean? He shivered. Could she not see the hunched figure sitting on the helmsman's bench? He took a step forward and pointed with a hurried motion. That. Don't you see that corpse? Nephi seemed both wary and slightly confused. Of course, I see that person. It's just that. Why do you keep calling them a corpse? That person is alive. Sunny eyes widened. And in the next moment, the corpse moved. With a deep sigh, its hanging head rose, and 2 dark chasms carved into the fearsome mask stared at Sunny with an ineffable emotion. Then, the corpse slowly, arduously stood up. No, not the corpse. The person. The wearer of Weaver's mask was, indeed, alive. Sunny watched silently, unable to move. Only his hand stretched out a little, ready to summon a weapon. Once the owner of the Ketch rose to their feet, he realized that they were indeed very small. The figure shrouded by the dark mantle was extremely thin, seeming weak and frail. The person's back was hunched, and their hands seemed to be shaking slightly. It was no surprise that Sunny had mistaken the wearer of the mask for a corpse. With the person remaining utterly motionless and his perception painted by the encounter in the dungeon of the ruined cathedral, it would have been strange for him to assume that they were alive. The hunched stranger froze, looking at them through the lightless pits of the black lacquered mask's eyes. Sunny and Nephi's weren't moving, either, not knowing what to do. They had just unceremoniously climbed into this person's boat. So, what was there to do? Ask politely to be saved. Or attack them out of fear. Sunny secretly shifted his gaze, trying to determine whether the wearer of the mask was a human or a nightmare creature. However, just like with the corpse beneath the cathedral, the dark mantle and the mask were impenetrable. Beyond them lay an unknowable abyss. An icy chill crept up his spine. Then, the owner of the Ketch slowly raised their hands, which were wrapped in black gloves. The thin fingers touched the edges of the black lacquered mask and slowly pulled it down. The face that was revealed belonged to a human. She was an old, extremely old woman. Sunny had never seen anyone who looked so ancient. He couldn't quite believe that someone that aged could still be alive. Her tanned skin was covered in a spiderweb of deep, cavernous wrinkles and clung to her emaciated face like fragile paper. Her long hair was entirely white and thin, revealing glimpses of the brown parchment of her scalp. Her eyes, which had been piercing once, were now dull and obscured by milky cataracts. The old woman's small, hunched body was frail and thin, as if ready to collapse from the smallest gale. The dark mantle hung listlessly from it, a few sizes too big. Nevertheless, she was emanating a feeling of unimpeachable dignity, willpower, and sanctity, even. The black mask fell to the deck of the Ketch with a wooden clack. The old woman was looking at Sunny and Nephi silently, one moment passing after another. And then, she moved. Bending down, she groaned and slowly kneeled. Sunny was startled, but most of all, he felt a strong urge to jump forward and stop her. It felt incredibly wrong to see such an old woman prostrating herself. Let alone in front of him. He noticed Neff's back growing stiff, as she felt the same. The corner of her eye twitched. But neither of them moved. Finally, the old woman's knees touched the deck. Placing both hands in front of her, she took a shaky breath, and then kowtowed deeply. Her quiet voice sounded like a scraping quill. Hearing it, Sunny flinched. She said, "Hail, Weaver. Demon of fate." In the silence that followed, he hesitated for a while, and then answered, "Firstborn of the unknown." The old woman remained motionless for a few moments, and then let out a long sigh. Lowering her head even closer to the deck, she spoke with reverence, "Anank greets the children of Weaver." Urdiel's note, ah. These are my favorite type of chapters, the lore drops. Super excited to see what she has to tell about the Weaver. What do you guys think she meant with children of Weaver? Could be Neff and Sunny alone, or it could be everyone connected to the spell. Who knows, who knows?